Give everyone a minute to connect to audio. Great. Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is the March 3rd meeting of the Portland Clean Energy Fund Grants Committee meeting. And we're just going to get started as we always do with some sort of general ground rules for the sort of virtual meeting participation. So the chat box is open right now for folks to send us messages if they run into any, if they have questions or they run into any technical problems. Please send those to the, you'll see in this, you can select to send a message to the tech and community support. But we also use the chat box just for doing introductions. And so after we have introductions of committee members and staff members, we will, I think it might be a small, depending on how many folks sign up. Oh, now there's 39 people in the room. So please introduce yourself in the chat box and just send that to everyone so everyone can see who's there. Generally, we ask people to just give their name if you have an organizational affiliation that you want to be associated with, and if you want to share your gender pronouns, put those in there as well. With such a large group, we do ask that folks who are not participating in the meeting turn their cameras off, so committee members have their cameras on, and so that it's easier to kind of see them and keep them from rearranging on our screens. There is a public comment period today that will start around 6:15. And I wanted to note that we do have a new process for signing up for public comment, and that is through a link on our website associated with an event. But you can also indicate that you're interested in providing public comment by just putting that into the chat. So if you want to provide public comment tonight, please do indicate that in the chat box, and we'll put you on the list. This meeting is being recorded, and this meeting also has closed captioning available, which you can find by going to the menu bar in your Zoom window and finding those 3 little buttons that you hover over and get the drop-down menu, and then you can go and view full transcript, and that's where you can see sort of the real-time captioning of the meeting. And so with that, I think we're first going to do some introductions, and then I'm going to hand it over to one of our committee members to do an opening inspiration. But I want to start with introductions of committee members, and I will just call off as I do each time. Amanda?
Amanda, she, her, committee member.
Thanks, Amanda. Shanice?
Shanice Clark, she, her, committee member.
Maria?
Maria Sippen, she, they, committee member.
Robin?
Good evening, Robin Wang, committee member, he, him.
Megan? Oh, actually, sorry. Megan is next on my list in front of me, but Megan Horst is a committee member who will be joining us a few minutes late. Ranfis?
Rainfeast, Genitino Viatoro, he, him pronouns, committee member.
Michael?
Michael Eden Hill, PCEF committee member, he, him.
Thanks, Michael. Jeffrey?
Jeffrey Moreland, committee member, he, him.
And Faith?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. Faith Graham, committee member, she, her.
Okay, and now we'll move on to staff. Sam?
Sam Brasso, PCEF staff, he, him.
And I can't see all of the staff who are online, so I might miss someone, and maybe just put it in the chat if I do miss you, but I can see James.
Everybody, James Valdez, PCEF staff, he, him.
And Janet?
Good evening, Janet Hammer, PCEF staff, she, her.
Angela,
Angela Prividelli, PCEF staff, she, her.
and that is all. That's the only view I have, except for June, who is our technical and community support today. June, you want to say hello?
Hi, everyone. Feel free to direct chat me when we turn off the chat, and I can help answer any clarifying questions that come up as folks are talking, and all the other stuff.
Okay, and now I do see David. You want to introduce yourself?
Hello, everybody. David Granfield. I'm the note taker today, but this is the last you'll see of me. Good to see you all. Happy to be here.
And Jay.
Hi, Jay, they, them pronouns, PCEF staff.
Thanks, Jay. And Angela.
Oh, I went, but again, Angela Prividelli, still part of the staff.
It's a long list. So I'm Katie Lister, PCEF staff, she, her pronouns, and I want to turn it over now to our committee member, Maria Sippen, who's going to provide an opening inspiration for tonight's meeting.
Thank you, and thanks to the staff who helped inspire this activity. I am going to call on my committee members here to participate in the chat and to wait for my prompt to send in your words and your good vibes out there. Tonight, I want each committee member to write in who they are bringing in with them into this space, but don't send it in just yet. Think about it a little bit before I ask you to hit enter. Think about who you're bringing with you in this space and in this work. Keep them in mind during the meeting today. Take this minute now to think about who they are. Write this out in the chat and start brainstorming, but don't hit send just yet. I'll let you know when the minute is up. Does anyone have a question about that? Okay, I will start the time now. Get your response ready in the chat box, and I'll ask you to hit send all at the same time so that you aren't thinking about other responses or distractions. 45 seconds. Okay. Get ready to copy and paste your response or whatever you have in there, and go ahead and hit send, everyone. Okay. I think everyone's gotten the responses in. I'm going to read off some of them or ask you to read yours aloud if you are inspired to do so. Please raise your hand if you'd like to read your response out loud. I'll start off by reading my own. This is Maria. I'm elevating the voices and needs of people with disabilities, immigrant and indigenous people, people who are far from home or creating a home wherever they have been moved, removed, or placed. My ancestors, farm workers, laborers, caregivers, and transit providers, and everyone else in Portland who I call my community. Jeffrey, thank you for raising your hand. I'll let you go next.
I'm bringing in the gentrified greater Northeast communities. I'm born and raised in Portland, and I saw this happen firsthand. So it's one of the main reasons I joined this, because I don't want to see that continue to happen and my people be disenfranchised.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Robin?
Hi, so I'm bringing in our children. It's their future, and right now they don't have much of a voice in it.
I'm going to wait a few seconds to see more hands raised, and if not, I'll bring it back to Sam to take us into the meeting. Thank you, everyone, for joining me for that. Sam?
Okay, I think I will actually pass it back to Katie. Thank you, Maria. I really appreciate that. Thank you all.
That was nice to see. Thank you. So I'm just going to cover a few more or a couple more basic slides and then hand it over to Sam for the majority of the meeting to kind of walk through the decision making. But I did want to, this is the agenda for tonight. And so we're sort of at the piece where we're going to have public comment next. And then we're going to talk about, just briefly touch on what we talked about last time, just to sort of cover it, to refresh people's memories, and for folks, maybe members of the public who weren't present. And then we're going to move into sort of presenting some of the characteristics or like requests that we got from committee members for new information. We'll take a break at 7, sort of regardless of where we are in the flow. Or in the order of things, and then move back into the grant funding recommendations, that deliberation and moving to a decision. We do have one kind of addition to the agenda, and that is that we do need to sort of talk about this summary report, and that is going to City Council, that will be going with our recommendations. And so we're going to add about 10 minutes before committee member reflections. So at 8:30, I think is the goal. And at that point, a member of the subcommittee who worked on that will just kind of give a brief overview. You all got it in your, you all got it via email, and it is available online as well. And so just a slight modification to the agenda. So I just wanted to note that before we really got going. So we do have 4 people signed up for public comment in the meeting. I didn't see any others that signed up in the chat, but I did want to note that we did receive 6 public comments via email, and those were provided to committee members and will become part of the minutes that are the record of this meeting. So just wanted to kind of acknowledge that those had been shared with committee members and were kind of part of this meeting. So the folks that we have signed up today are in this order: Sergio Lopez, Anissa Pemberton, Simeon Jacob, and Jamal Dar. So I'm going to ask Sergio to first turn on your camera if you want to, unmute yourself, and say hello.
Hey everybody, can everyone see me / hear me pretty well? Awesome. So my name is Sergio Lopez, and I am here on the behalf of Verde, environmental justice nonprofit who is a member of the PCEF coalition that also represents the Coley neighborhood in Northeast Portland. In involvement with the PCEF fund, we are here to express full support for the work that the PCEF startup team and the PCEF grant committee is doing and has done thus far. About Verde, for those who are not familiar, we are located in the Coley neighborhood in Northeast Portland, and we are an environmental justice nonprofit that serves communities by building environmental wealth through social enterprise, outreach, and advocacy. Verde has full confidence and trust in the committee and are grateful for the work they've been doing so far. The PCEF fund is crucial for many reasons. PCEF is created by and for Portland's communities of color. It aligns with Verde's mission, in which it can fund and create resources for healthy homes and green jobs in communities affected by the climate crisis, such as Coley. For example, and specifically to Coley in Northeast, it has strong rural elements, such as large lots, unpaved and meandering streets, and low density. Coley includes the most racial and ethnically diverse census tract in Oregon and is largely zoned industrial. PCEF will build resources such as community solar, clean energy, and other programs that advocate for clean air and quality improvements. With that being said, Verde fully understands the big picture long game of PCEF and is providing full support regardless of the outcome of this grant cycle. We fully support the process and the fund. Thank you for allowing us time.
Thank you. So next we have Anissa, and following Anissa is Simeon. Anissa?
Hi, everyone. I want to begin by thanking all of the grant committee members for your valuable, tireless, and justice-driven efforts to implement the Portland Clean Energy Fund. It feels like just yesterday that I joined the Portland Clean Energy Fund Coalition as a field organizer for the ballot measure. And I'm really overjoyed by the progress that our community, the grant committee, and the PCEF startup team have made in the last 2 years. Through multiple crises, the grant committee has held tight to the vision that frontline communities intended when we passed the Portland Clean Energy Fund on the ballot. While many of our coalition members have applied, my organization, the Coalition of Communities of Color, chose to serve as an intermediary, empowering my position to work closely with you all without any expectation of funding. As the Portland Clean Energy Fund Coalition Coordinator, I have collaborated with all of you, staff and community members, and I've watched very closely as the process has unfolded. I just want you all to know that this program is really exceeding my expectations, and the thoroughness and the thoughtfulness that you all have consistently pursued amidst a very wide array of challenges in the past year. As we look forward to the first round of grants, we are celebrating the distribution of funds into our local Black, Indigenous, people of color, and low-income communities, and the benefits that that money will bring. It has only become clearer in the years since we wrote the ballot measure that established the Portland Clean Energy Fund that BIPOC and low-income communities need targeted investments in order to come out of the other end of today's crisis. We know that there will have to be tough decisions, and we understand that you all are having to make those hard decisions. We also know that there is future funding opportunities, and the ability to reapply and improve upon projects will be paramount to the success of this program. We know that there needs to be high expectations for grantees, and we also know that we need to work with you all to reduce barriers for our community groups who need the funds. And so I look forward to continue working with you all and discussing, how we balance out those priorities and what that looks like if changes need to be made in the future. As we step into the next stage of the Portland Clean Energy Fund program, I just hope that you know that the PCEF Coalition and myself are here to support you in your successes, challenge you in your discussions, and collaborate with you towards just solutions. We believe that you all have led a phenomenal effort so far, and we're so excited to see all of the innovative and meaningful work that comes from this grant round. So congratulations. I really want you all to take pride in what you've been doing and what you're doing tonight. You all have done really amazing work, and it's worth celebrating that. And I hope you all know that my gratitude is kind of hard to describe at this point, but in short, extremely bountiful. Thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you all soon.
Thank you, Anissa. Simeon, and then Jamal is our final person providing public comment after that. But first, Simeon. Jacob?
Yep, thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Simeon Jacob. I am with TAPANO, which is the Asian Pacific American Network of Oregon. And yeah, started out as a community member and then staff, and being able to work as like administrative support when PCEF was an idea. And I just wanted to share a continued gratitude, maybe even some affirmation as you all continue in this next step. I actually found some documents back in 2007 from 2017 around timing. Like I recognize that in this process, there have been a lot of challenges and wanting to give due diligence. And one of the things that of encouragement and just recognizing that these things take time is that when the bill was wanting to be introduced, the coalition and the alliance wanted to make sure that when we moved forward, wanting to do so meaningfully and doing so where we are taking these steps to center our communities who are most impacted. And so I found a letter where instead of having it in May, that to make sure that our communities who are most impacted, who could continue to be centered, we wanted to make sure that it got pushed to November 2018 election. And so I know that timelines have shifted in this process, but we've made it to this point, and congratulations. And just recognizing that that extra time is just what we needed to continue to be grounded and making sure that our communities, that this was this vision that we had created continues to serve our Black and Indigenous and communities of color. And so I really appreciate y'all's work and the long nights that you have spent in making sure that these resources go out into serving our community. So that's all I have to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Simeon. Now, Jamal.
Good evening. How are you guys? First of all, my name is Jamal Dar, Executive Director of African Youth and Community Organization. I want to begin by thanking all of you guys, the committee, the PCEF committee, who put 110% efforts and transparency communicating with us throughout the system and throughout the application process. ICO has been around for the past 11 years. We mainly focus on support East African population. We're the largest organization that serve youth, athletic, and leadership. Our mission is set on the past to engage the present and hope the future. Meaning of that, every single client of ours went through a trauma, been traumatized through the civil war, through a refugee camp, and they are survivors. Each one of the community members that we serve also at least have one or two members of the disability, and that is disability individuals. And because of that, the immigration system was deliberately planned that way to receive the resettlement in the United States. A lot of people do not know that. For the past 11 years, the youth that we serve are now leading our organization as the program coordinators, as the grant coordinators, as developers. And our legacy shows that we want to develop tomorrow leaders, and we focus that day in and day out. We also have trauma-informed education. We also have a healthcare and disability program that focus on those single mothers who have 6-7 children, and their family members, and have at least 1 or 2 disabled kids. Our primary focus is to build the tomorrow leaders and to create an opportunity for those who are being underserved and underemployed and never been included into the system. And 90% of the clients that we serve, they are Black, they're immigrant, and majority of them are Muslim. These are the individuals who will be receiving opportunities to take advantage of it, this PCEF, Portland Community Energy Fund, and the collaboration that we have with the rest of the team. We look forward hearing from you, and we are 100% behind your support and be with you in your journey. We are very thankful, and I'm so pleased to be here tonight to talk to you.
Thank you, Jamal. Okay, we are going to move into the next part of the meeting, which is talking about funding recommendations. I wanted to start, I think, just by, again, kind of recentering the guiding principles as we kind of start to talk about weighing your options and what decision you're going to make tonight. And I would like to ask for volunteers to from the committee members to read these like we did last time. I thought that was good to hear them out loud, and also kind of creates greater accessibility. So if folks could either raise their hand or chime in and pick one of the guiding principles, then that would be great.
I can start us off. And I'll read the opening paragraph here. So focused on climate action with multiple benefits. Invest in people, livelihoods, places, and processes that build climate resilience and community wealth, foster healthy communities, and support regenerative systems. Avoid and mitigate displacement, especially resulting from gentrification pressures.
Thanks, Shanice. Amanda?
Yeah, I'll read justice-driven. So justice-driven, advanced systems change that addresses historic and current discrimination, center all disadvantaged and marginalized groups, particularly Black and Indigenous people.
Michael?
Community powered. Trust community knowledge, experience, innovation, and leadership. Honor and build on existing work and partnerships while supporting capacity building for emerging community groups and diverse coalitions. Engage with and invest in community-driven approaches that foster community power to create meaningful change.
Thanks, Michael. And Megan, if you could introduce yourself and read the last guiding principle, that would be great.
Yeah, that's why I raised my hand too. Hi, everybody. Megan Horst, committee member, she, her, and apologies for arriving late again. I teach on Wednesdays till 6:30, and I thought I could sneak out early, but it didn't happen. Accountable. Implement transparent funding, oversight, and engagement processes that promote continuous learning, programmatic checks and balances, and improvements. Demonstrate achievement of equitable social, economic, and environmental benefit. Remain accountable to target beneficiaries, grantees, and all Portlanders.
Thanks, Megan. And I just, we just got a request from someone to give public comment. And so I think that we're gonna honor that request. It's just one more person. I'm actually just gonna move the slides backwards so that it says public comment and ask Sharon Bratton to go on screen and provide your public comment.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity to be a part of the committee meeting tonight. I'm Sharon Maxwell, a woman-owned business, African-American, and a small business, and we're glad for this opportunity to partner with the Seoul Business District for the PCEF grant opportunity to be able to grow capacity as well as provide workforce opportunity for those African-American, Indigenous, and Latina men that have not only been forgotten, but that have been pushed to the side as it relates to the construction industry and within the new green economy. As a woman-owned business 21 years ago, when I seen this community in North and Northeast Portland being destroyed and blighted, I took the step by faith to start a business. But being a woman in a non-traditional industry, I've been discriminated against, and the PCEF fund would help to build capacity and provide opportunity. And so we're thankful to see that the funding source was passed and the work that all those that have committed to it. And it really looks like this is very promising to make a difference in the community for the target population. So we're grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Okay. So the last slide that I want to speak to, and then I'm going to hand it over to Sam, is just a reminder, because tonight is a night where we are hoping to come to a decision. So this is just a reminder about kind of how decisions are made within the PCEF committee. This is what y'all came up with in a little bit more detail that was developed in the bylaws subcommittee. So we operate with a modified consensus decision-making process. Someone puts forth a proposal, a committee member. We generally take a temperature check where each committee member indicates kind of how comfortable they are with making an affirmative decision, have additional discussion if needed with the intention to move toward consensus. Amendments can be made. Committee members can offer amendments to the original proposal, and then a decision is made. When a decision is called for, each committee member has three options. They can affirm the proposal, they can stand aside, or they can indicate a no, which is that they do not support the proposal. In terms of like actually affirming a decision or sort of passing a proposal, there are 9 committee members here tonight, which means that we would need 6 affirmative decisions. And if you stand aside, that does, for the purposes of passing a proposal, sort of count in the column of affirming the proposal. It's essentially saying you're not 100% comfortable, but you believe that it is in the best interest of sort of the group to kind of go along with the proposal that has been put forth. So that, just a quick reminder, because it is can sometimes feel a little wonky, like the words that we use about it, and it is different than just kind of a traditional voting that sometimes happens on boards. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sam, and Sam is going to walk us through the rest of the evening and help us make a decision.
Thank you, Katie. Just want to thank you all and thank everyone for being here with us tonight. So this is a slide that you all saw last week with this, and this is just to recall the work that went into last week's meeting for folks that are just chiming into this meeting. But last week we went over and talked about and provided an overview on the applications received, talked a little bit about the timeline around the things that went into getting to releasing our RFP. So spoke to and dug into the timeline on everything that went into the community engagement, the public comment periods, everything else that went into releasing our RFP, and then ultimately the results here that we received in terms of the number of folks that engaged with our RFP, our request for proposals, and actually applied back in September, or actually back out by November 23rd of 2020. So I'm just going to walk back through this a little bit, but I just wanted to kind of ground folks in terms of folks chiming in. We dove in last week and spoke to a little bit of what led us to this process here. And so, as a reminder, we received 140 applications when we closed the application period out. Of those 140 applications, 135 passed the eligibility review, meaning that they were projects based within the city of Portland, that they met the sort of core requirements of the program. They're coming from nonprofit organizations, sort of the core eligibility review. Of those 135, 133 passed the technical review. And this was to make sure that this is really a low bar, but to make sure that projects are technically feasible. This isn't about staff judging or technical experts judging whether a project is engaging or using best practices, but it's to make sure, can a project actually happen? And now we're coming here to go from that 133 to narrow down further with the work. And so that 133 were reviewed by, were scored in scoring panels. We had 9 scoring panels comprised of three members on each scoring panel, 1 committee member, 1 staff member, and at least 1 subject matter expert. And on each of those scoring panels, each scoring panel was at least majority Black or Indigenous, or just majority people of color, and or non-white identifying members on each scoring panel. So those scoring panel members scored the proposals. Those initial scores were sent to the applicants, and then the applicants were allowed to respond. And then the scoring panels came back together, reviewed each of those responses where applicants responded, and deliberated and came to their final scores. And those final scores were then used and ranked in order of their average scores, and were used to create the portfolios that were presented before you all last week, and we will dig into again shortly. with the expectation that we come to a decision at the end of the night, and then come April 1st, we forward those we forward those decisions to City Council next week, and then come April 1st, City Council takes up the recommendation and then takes action on the recommendation. So for folks, that's going to happen April 1st at 2 p.m. And we've got our meeting set aside on March 17th is our next committee meeting. So I just want to put a placeholder in there that's the meeting that we'll be looking to discuss co-chairs and ideally coming to electing co-chairs or selecting co-chairs in that meeting, but in the least getting to who would be presenting at City Council in that meeting. So just so that can at least wrap up that process of getting from after we come out of today where we get to in terms of presenting this in front of City Council. So I'm going to just pause here as doing a little bit of recall here before we jump into the portfolios and get a little numbery with you all, and we'll bring some additional information that you all asked in the last meeting. I want to just pause here and see if there are any questions around what I've just shared so far around the process that resulted in the portfolios we'll review shortly. Okay.
Sam, this is Sharon Maxwell. Question is, for the recommended applications, how many will there be?
We will share that shortly. We've got a few. So what we're going to present shortly here in the next 3 slides is we're going to present portfolios, which are really packages of proposals. And within each of those packages of proposals, they're structured based on information that the committee or decisions the committee made earlier last year. And so we will walk through each of those portfolios, and each one has a different number of proposals that are in them.
Okay, and in regards to the co-chairs that will be selected, could you explain that a little bit more? What is
I will. And this may help as a recall for committee members. When our committee, there's a subcommittee that with Michael Edenhill as well as Andrea Hamburg, who's no longer a committee member, created bylaws. And within those, within the bylaws that the committee ultimately adopted, it created a structure, and instead of having a structure where there's a chair or a vice chair and other structure, there's co-chairs and we don't have those yet, that will ultimately be selected by the full committee, that will be the individuals that staff work with in order to create agendas and help liaise and work with directly with staff in order to support the committee's work and provide direction on that and feedback.
Okay, I see. I just wasn't sure why that was kind of said, co-chairs, why the co-chairs were being selected.
It's a decision we've been needing to come to, and because we're a newly formed committee, I think there's a lot of teasing some things out, but what we anticipate is coming to those co-chair decisions next week, and I'll be reaching out to folks in the meanwhile to tease out interest, so that by the time we get to City Council, that may be the 2 folks, and additional others that certainly can present to City Council, but that'd be at least the starting place.
And are you guys expecting for applicants to support you all on April 1st when you, will you be presenting to City Council that day, or?
Thank you, Sharon. We will be presenting to City Council. And Sharon, I think just so that I can keep the meeting, I appreciate the questions, but what I might do is, if it's okay, Sharon, I direct you to one of our staff members in the chat box, June Reyes on the tech and community support, would be happy to answer some of these questions, or so that you have a sense for how the next steps will go as well.
Okay, I thought you said this was the question time.
I sincerely appreciate the questions, and I think they're good questions. But I was directing the questions at the committee, or speaking questions from the committee. And so for others though, if you have questions, please, in the chat box is my colleague Jim Reyes. Okay. All right.
I, for one, appreciate all of Sharon's questions. So just want to share that.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Sharon. I know those are important questions to get out and help inform the public as well. So, okay, let's move on to the next slide. So there's a lot of information here, and what I just want to walk you all through. In some ways, actually, Kate, let's bring it back one slide. before we, oh, I know this makes things complicated. Okay, great. Before we jump into the next slides, we shared two portfolios with you all last week. We called it Portfolio A and Portfolio B. And coming into this week, we wanted to just see if there was a sense, we were like, maybe there's a third portfolio that we were sensing that folks may be interested in. So we created a Portfolio C. That Portfolio C really is in between A and B. So sequentially, it may confuse folks. It's really, you'll see as we describe the portfolio that it really is, it's an in-between between Portfolio A and Portfolio B. And so we'll describe that third portfolio and characterize them at the end. So I will share that we will go through and characterize what are the differences between each of those portfolios. But when we jump into this next slide, we'll pause and I'll just orient you to some new information that is on that slide, and then we will go through and see if there are questions. Okay. All right, so this is Portfolio A. As a reminder, the way that this portfolio was crafted is that the committee made the decision early on that you all wanted to fund at least 1.5 million in planning grants to give some certainty for folks that there'd be at least 1.5 million in planning grants. So that's what we crafted this portfolio with, is that we started with about 1.5 million in planning grants. And so we took all the planning grants that were ranked highest up to 1.5 million. And then for the remaining of the funds, we tried to strike the midpoint for all the categories. And those midpoints, as a reminder, were we published ranges for the clean energy funding allocation, for the workforce funding allocation, workforce and contract development funding allocation, for the regenerative ag and green infrastructure funding allocation, and for each of those categories, we published a range. And so generally, we tried to strike the midpoint of that range here with this portfolio. And so I'll walk through that as we go through this, which there's a lot of information here. So in this portfolio, there's 36 grants. Of those 36 grants, 17 grants are planning grants, and then 19 are what we call implementation grants. They're not planning grants. And that falls in 9 clean energy grants, 4 workforce and contractor development grants, 4 regenerative ag and green infrastructure grants. That's what it says, the RA/GI at the bottom there is regenerative ag and green infrastructure. And then 2 multi-grants. These were grants that didn't squarely or predominantly fit in one category. They truly represented multiple funding areas. And so these are funding areas that are called out within the code. In this new information that we're adding to this that you did not see last week is that in addition to the fact that there's 36 grants in this particular portfolio or package of proposals, there's this portfolio also represents 30 unique applicants. So that indicates that there's multiple applicants within here that are receiving multiple grants. So within this, the total lifetime greenhouse gas impact that was evaluated and estimated is about 13,307 metric tons of CO2 equivalent. And this is a correction here, is that the projects with physical improvements serving east of 82nd are 9 projects instead of 10 is what we shared last week. Those projects have, the physical improvement projects are the clean energy projects, as well as the regenerative ag, green infrastructure projects, and the multi-category projects. Each of those projects do have some amount of some physical improvement, whereas the 4 grants in the workforce category do not. And just to clarify sort of where that one applicant indicated in their application, their project was east of 82nd, but as we sort of went back through and as we were characterizing each of these things for you all, realized that particular project, if you dug into the description, it actually was in Northeast. It's just a mistake in the way they checked off the box. So that's where that is. Within this portfolio, just about 31 of the 36 projects scored a perfect score in terms of the applicant reflecting the priority population that they intended to serve. And we broke that down of the implementation grants. It was 14 out of 19 reflected the priority population. We had about 14. Well, just go to the percentages and we can come back to the numbers. We had about 37% of the total funding was going to small organizations. These are organizations with less than 6 employees. And of the implementation grants, so these are the grants that are not planning grants, 61% of those had physical improvements. So that comes back to those are the clean energy, regenerative ag, and the multi-project categories. Now, one additional piece of information I was asked for, and I'm going to try to go through this slowly, is this bar chart, because it's going to take a minute to get oriented. This is this bar chart that we have on the bottom right-hand corner of our slide. What the bar chart does is it shows the number of project grants. These are of the implementation projects by the amount requested, and then we color-coded it to give you a sense for, what you can see is of the clean energy project. So this is an energy efficiency renewable energy project at the far right-hand corner. It's got that red. That means you've got a clean energy project that's between 800 and 900,000. Going all the way to the far left-hand side of this bar chart, you've got a regenerative ag or green infrastructure project. That's an implementation grant that's from that's less than 100,000. And so that's what. And so the takeaway, I think, that if as you orient yourself to this, is really that there's a good distribution of clean energy projects across, values. There's good distribution of small clean energy projects, middle size, and large clean energy projects. Similarly, there's a good distribution of small workforce projects, and I say small from the value, from how much they're asking from the fund, and medium as well as large. Where you see maybe a little bit of a skewing is that the regenerative ag and green infrastructure projects are a little bit smaller, and specifically, I can even give a little more nuance. The regenerative ag projects are all below 200,000. The one green box that you see there in the middle there is a green infrastructure project. So in that portfolio of the 4 grants, 3 of them were regenerative ag focused, and 1 of them was green infrastructure focused. So before I move to the next slide, just from a different information that's presented here, because we're going to characterize them. I know we will get into further a little bit more narrative around what they are, but just as you see this information, because we're going to present the next 2 portfolios in a similar way, just want to see if there are any questions about the information that's being presented here, and happy to sit here for a little while to let this sink in too. I think some folks are annotating on this. Let's see if we can clear that. I cleared the annotation. I managed to clear it, but maybe I'll leave that.
Maybe that was River.
Okay. Let's move to the next slide, and then we'll move to portfolio C and describe the difference there, and then we'll come back. Okay, portfolio B. Now, a key difference here starting out as we design this portfolio, and again, remember, each of these portfolios are strictly directly ranked. We took the projects as they were ranked and put them into, and it's just we were adjusting how much went into each bucket. So within this portfolio, there's roughly about 2.5 million set aside for planning. What that did is that nearly, for the most part, that left us where we were trying to fund the minimum of the remaining categories. In this, what you get is you get 45 total grants. So you get about 9 additional grants as compared to portfolio A. You have 38 unique applicants here. So again, there's applicants that are receiving multiple grants in this portfolio, and you're getting a little bit lower lifetime greenhouse gas impact. You're going from about 13,300 or so to 11,400. And you're losing 1 project east of 82nd. Now, the key differences in this portfolio, which we will speak to again later, is that there are about 12 additional planning grants in this portfolio. But there are 3 fewer implementation projects in this portfolio. And so where you lose those implementation projects are you lose 2 clean energy projects, and then you lose 1 of your multi-category projects. And the multi-category project you lose in this portfolio compared to portfolio A was a clean energy / green infrastructure project. In this portfolio, you have slightly greater percentage of the funding going towards applicants that scored a perfect score on reflecting the priority population they want to serve. Nearly the same in terms of percentage of funding going to smaller organizations, and you have fewer dollars, less than half, compared to 61% in the prior portfolio going to projects with physical improvements. The distribution you see here doesn't really change much. It's still because it's just a few projects you're talking about. So there isn't really much of change in terms of the trend across the distribution, the bar chart to the bottom right-hand corner. which brings us to I'm going to go shift to the new portfolio, and we'll toggle back and forth. We'll toggle back and forth, and we'll get to comparison slides. So I'm going to go ahead and move us to the next portfolio and speak to this one. So this, we tried to strike the middle. We've kind of heard, we gave you sort of the, not necessarily the extremes. And I think I want to caution that as we see this portfolio, I know that there can always be a tendency to go towards, there's a bias for going towards the middle. This central bias exists in a lot of the things that we do. Whenever you get sold a product that's really expensive and you see a product that's not quite, you tend to go to the middle, and it's a marketing push. So we just want to caution as you feel it, that you might think intentionally about this portfolio, because we created it here, but and I'll talk about what's exactly in here, but I want to make sure that you all check in with yourselves as we go through this conversation, because this portfolio is right in between portfolio A and portfolio B, and namely it's that there's about 2 million going to planning grants in this portfolio. You get 39 grants, so as opposed to 36 grants in portfolio A versus 45 grants in portfolio B. You got 33 unique applicants. You have about 13,000 total lifetime greenhouse gas impact, and you have 8 projects serving east of 80 seconds. So you lost a project serving east of 80 seconds from portfolio A. Here, the difference between portfolio is going to get complicated. I'm going to use portfolio A as our reference, if that helps. From portfolio A, you lose 1 clean energy project, as opposed to you lost 2 clean energy projects when you went to portfolio B. As compared to portfolio A, you gain 5 planning grants, whereas in portfolio B, you gained 12 planning grants. You still have 4 workforce grants, you still have 4 regenerative ag and green infrastructure grants, and you did lose 1 multi-category grant. And that multi-category grant was a clean energy and green infrastructure grant. In terms of you have about, we can go through the category. You'll see the numbers at the top right-hand corner, but 82% of the funding would go towards to applicants that scored a perfect score in our scoring criteria for reflecting the communities that they serve, the priority populations that they serve. A little bit less in terms of funding going towards small organizations, and we have about 56% of the funds, a little bit over half, to directly right between the other 2 portfolios going towards projects with physical improvements. I'm going to grab my notes, and so we'll talk before we kind of move. I don't want to move. I want to make sure that just to check if there's questions, and we're going to come back and speak to again the differences shortly, so we won't miss that opportunity. But I want to just see if there are any questions so far.
Megan?
Well, mine's more of a comment rather than a question. Is this an okay time for that, Sam? Okay, so yeah. As we're toggling through this, and I'm thinking about the differences, but I read through the written public comments that you all shared in advance. And one of them really was sitting with a lot during our review and also in this deliberation. And it's just something I wanted to talk about, even though it's not something we can change now, but it's just anyway. But there was a public comment asking about our choice that's implied here of all or nothing budgeting, which we did. I just want to make clear to the public that is the choice we made as a PCEF committee, that we just accepted the budgets applicants gave us, because we asked for you to tell us what you needed, money wise, to do the project right, to pay employees and contractors well, and to just do a high quality job. And we didn't second guess it really, and we didn't do an approach about going back to organizations or thinking about asking you to cut down budgets. But it does create this trade-off, and that what it means is that we may be funding less projects because of that, and that just is a trade-off with that choice. And I don't really, anyway, it's just something I'm sitting with a lot, because at the end of and I'm noticing the green ag ones and the green infrastructure and renewable ag ones, which is sort of the position I represent on the committee, are the smallest projects financially. That's just another observation I have across these. So it's not a question, it's just an observation. But I guess the reflection for committee and staff is that I'm not sure it's the decision we want to keep going forward. I don't know. I certainly think we learned a lot this round. We saw what people asked for. There's a lot we learned, and I think we still are learning and digesting, but it's just a reaction. So it's not really a reaction to the specific portfolios, because that doesn't change among them, but it's just kind of a reaction to the money aspect of it all. So yeah, and I feel good that we made that decision in the first pilot year, but it does create that kind of tension. Is they're just, yeah, and we have a wide range of budgets also. I notice in these bar charts, you know, from under 100 all the way to about $1 million, and that's a pretty big range. Just observing that.
Thank you, Megan. I appreciate that. It's there will be a lot of reflections that we will there'll be a lot of reflections we'll be bringing back, and we've already started as staff to digest some of those, and there'll be more that will be certainly coming back. And once we give you all a break to kind of pause with this and sit with this, so I really appreciate that. And it's there's trade-offs and pros and cons to each of these decisions, and so there's going to be good discussion afterwards. Well, I'm going to go ahead and see if we want to move on to the next slide, where I'll just provide some more of that additional narrative and flavor to what's in these projects. And maybe before we jump to that, I'll start with maybe what I'll just I'll start with these maps. Maybe I'll just reflect what's showing in these maps. There's a request made for us in the last committee meeting to map out the projects, to get a sense from a geographical perspective, where are these projects happening? And so these maps here that we'll show of Portfolio A and Portfolio B are maps of the implementation projects. We couldn't quite map the planning grants, but generally speaking, what we did observe in reviewing the planning grant proposals that were in both portfolios, actually Portfolio A is the sort of the smallest of the planning grants. So each portfolio subsequently carries that portfolio, but there were planning grants that focused on all areas of the city with strong representation for planning projects to benefiting Northeast Portland as well as East Portland, as well as folks indicating that future projects would be citywide. So there was just a strong representation across the planning grants, indicating various geographies. As it relates to the particular and specific implementation grants you have in Portfolio A, you'll see that we've got a bulk of the proposals coming and benefiting East Portland and located in East Portland. Another good chunk focused on Northeast Portland, but you'll also see that we don't have any proposals that are occurring in Southeast, West Portland, or Central C. Okay. Next slide. So this is Portfolio B, and as you recall, with Portfolio B, we lost three. You lose 3 implementation grants. So if you gain 12 planning grants, you lose 3 implementation grants, and so you see you lose a project in Northeast Portland and a project. You lose a couple projects in Northeast Portland and a project in East Portland. Okay. And maybe before I move on to the next slide, the one thing I'll just say is for folks wanting to follow along on these slides as I'm going through, and I know that from an accessibility perspective, the Zoom slides don't necessarily read, but we do, you can go to our website and download the slides themselves there, or you can click in the chat box. There's a link there that links to the PowerPoint itself, so folks want to follow along, and it's a PDF of the PowerPoint so that readers can access that. But we'll also just share that if the grant committee tonight makes a funding recommendation, this was a note made by June in the chat box, it will be brought to City Council for approval on April 1st. Okay, so we didn't make a map of Portfolio C in part because we came to that a little bit later before our GIS folks could pull that together for us, but it does reflect an in-between between Portfolio A and Portfolio B. And I think what's demonstrative here really in these maps is that you've got a significant set of the implementation grants going, and the ones with physical improvements going and benefiting east of 82nd. I should acknowledge these are for the projects of physical improvements. The workforce grants were generally some of them were citywide, some of them had focus on like Northeast and East, but they weren't as focused. So this was focused on the projects where they're building something in a place. Are there any questions about sort of just what's shown here? And this is our best way of bubbling this up at a resolution that could kind of speak to all the projects. So I think that we'll obviously have a lot of different mapping and things to speak to projects in the future as folks want to look back and see where investments have happened, but this speaks to at least this initial set of proposals. Okay. Next slide. So before I jump in here and actually start walking through the differences, I'm going to just speak to a little bit of just what we're seeing at a high level across the grants. And so what we generally observe in terms of both Portfolio A and Portfolio B, and actually Portfolio C as well, in terms of the implementation grants. So these are the projects where folks are specifically, they're requesting funds in order to do something that they've already planned and that they have a pretty defined scope for. Is that we generally saw representation across the range of culturally specific communities. So we had several proposals that specifically addressed the Black community, proposals that specifically addressed the Native American community, proposals that specifically addressed the Asian Pacific Islander community. As well as in Portfolio A, we have a proposal that specifically addresses the Latinx community. And so you do lose a specific proposal that addresses the Latinx community as you move to Portfolios B and Portfolio C. However, what you do have is many of the proposals are multicultural or representing multiple priority populations. What they would say is we're focusing on our project on Black, Indigenous, people of color, as well as low-income people, women, folks with disabilities. So some of them had a broader lens to their focus, and so there were several of those. And so I want to acknowledge that there's a bucket of applicants that spoke to their focus in that way, and then there was a handful that spoke to that particular focused representation. Across and I'll speak to planning grants, and I'll speak to sort of what's missing. Across planning grants, we similarly had we had representation that spoke to the range of culturally specific communities, as well as multicultural approaches to their proposals. What we don't have in either planning grants or implementation grants were proposals that explicitly focused on people with disabilities, or proposals that explicitly focused on women. So again, there were those proposals that have many priority populations, but we didn't have any of those specifically focused proposals. So we didn't capture those. And I think some of that may be a reflection of the amount of money we're going out with, but it's also something we're digging into in terms of outreach and that we need to do as we move forward. So if folks have just questions about the communities that show up in each of the portfolios or don't show up in the portfolios. Okay, and obviously I expect we can come back to this as this sinks in. What I'll just speak to is a little bit of what these projects are in Portfolio A, so you all have a sense, and then we'll speak to sort of what are the differences as we go in. And I'm going to speak to the implementation grants. Generally, what I'll just say about planning grants is we had a really good distribution across the planning grants of proposals that are indicating focusing on
Sam,
I believe you're muted, or we lost you. Whatever he was talking about just then, that was the thing. Still muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Where did I get lost? Where did I stop?
Probably about 45 seconds ago. I think you were just beginning to sort of ask about or talk about dig into the differences between the implementation grants.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe I'll acknowledge here what you see. The planning grants, I'll just say, is that they're fairly representative of many different project types that were being planned for. And so we saw a good distribution of planning grants across the categories, and many planning grants that were focused on many categories and still teasing that out. So I think that's just an indication that planning grants weren't leaning one particular direction or another, but there was a good distribution. And in Portfolio A, of the 17 planning grants, all 17 of those did get a perfect score on applicants reflecting the communities that they served. So as we move to implementation grants, as we talk about sort of the clean energy grants in Portfolio A, what we saw is mostly residential focused projects, both single family as well as multifamily, so apartment buildings. And they generally had a mix of energy efficiency and renewable projects. So you didn't have any projects that were necessarily solely renewables, but you had a mix. Most projects had a mix of energy efficiency, or predominantly energy efficiency, and may have had some renewable in there. Majority of the work that is being seen here is deep energy retrofits on homes, and as acknowledged, no project was exclusively renewable. And all of these were in either, the clean energy projects were either in East or North Portland. Of the workforce projects, 2 of the projects are training for new and existing workforce in construction and building maintenance, and 1 project provided training and community education in the field not related to building construction or maintenance. 1 project focused on youth, and all of them were citywide. Of the regenerative ag and green infrastructure, there was 2 regenerative ag projects and 2 green infrastructure, although one of them had a mix of both. They included components of green infrastructure workforce development and training in regenerative ag. 3 locations were specified, all on the east side, and 1 of the locations was not specified. And so when we move to Portfolio B and C, I'll speak to sort of what you lose. So this speaks to like the baseline that's in Portfolio A, which is the reference portfolio. And of those implementation grants, 14 of 19 got a perfect score for reflecting the communities that they served. Okay. And I realized that we were approaching where we'd scheduled a break at 7, but I'm going to move to this slide and then we'll take a break and come back. Sorry.
Which slide are we wanting to go to, Sam?
Stay on that slide. I want to go through the differences. I want to stay there. I wanted to finish that slide up and then come back to, yeah. So what we lost in Portfolio B in terms of the implementation grants is I'll start with you gained 12 planning grants. So that's the big thing, that you gained 12 planning grants as you move to that. And of those 12 planning grants, you all see on the screen the distribution of those is 3 additional workforce development focused grants, 1 contractor support focused grant, 2 regenerative ag green infrastructure focused grants, 3 with multiple 3 in other innovation, and 3 with multiple project types. Of those 12 additional grants, 9 of them got a perfect score for reflecting the communities that they served. In terms of Portfolio B, on the implementation side, you lost three implementation projects. One of them was an energy efficiency project on a multifamily building in Northeast Portland. One of it was a single family residential clean energy project east of 82nd, or a single family energy efficiency project. And then one of them was a commercial energy efficiency and green infrastructure project in North Portland. And so once you get down, so that portfolio went down to 16 grants. And so 12 out of the 16 got a perfect score for reflecting the communities that they served in that portfolio. And then really Portfolio C was sort of the in-between. So it's Portfolio A plus 5 additional planning grants. So 3 workforce development focused, 1 contractor support focused, and 1 other innovation. And all 5 of those got a perfect score for reflecting the communities that they served. And so that gets you from 17 to 22 planning grants. And Portfolio C lost 2 implementation grants as compared to Portfolio A. So again, we lost the single family residential energy efficiency project focused on east of 82nd, and we lost a commercial energy efficiency or green infrastructure project in North Portland. So as compared to Portfolio B, the project that you held on to in Portfolio C is the multifamily project in Northeast Portland. So it's a multifamily clean energy project in Northeast Portland. Okay. and 13 of the 17 get a perfect score for reflecting the communities that they serve. And so in all of these portfolios, there are projects that are doing, most of the projects are some element of community engagement, outreach, education, as well as, folks that are hiring technical contractors to help scope and conduct the research to inform the projects. So that existed across all of the planning grants in each of the portfolios. Okay. Put a lot of information in front of you and I'm sure I can characterize these in different ways and can get better at that. So I'm hoping you all are taking notes on how we can do this better. But I know we've been talking to you all for a little while now, and we said we'd take a break at 7 o'clock. So I want to check in and see if folks would be okay with taking a break, or if folks had questions they wanted to ask now before coming back. So seeing some nodding for a break. So I think let's go ahead and take our 10-minute break now. It's 7:13 on my clock. And so let's come back at 7:24 and round up a little bit. Okay.
Okay. So I think what we just talked about is we shared a lot of stuff with you, a lot of content, and it's and some of it you all have seen last week and seen in front of you in the memo. Although Portfolio C wasn't described in the memo, and a little bit of it, some piece of information changed. But we just wanted to have you all on the screen. And actually, I'm going to turn off folks that had my non-video folks. We wanted to bring you all together here and have you all getting to see each other, not distracted by the screen for a moment. We can certainly turn it back on and jog back through some of that information, but we can also answer. I think we're fairly, we've got a lot of it in our heads and in our notes here. So we just want to give you all some space here to see what are things that are coming up for you as you're coming back in, as you reflected on some of the things you all asked us for last week. And we've come back and shared some of that content with you all. Would love to hear sort of what's coming up for you all, and frankly, turn the floor back to you all so you can have your discussion.
Jeffrey?
Well, I guess first off, I appreciate everything, all the work you guys put in. I see you guys really did take all the comments we made and implemented them pretty well. It made a lot more sense to me this go around than even the last meeting. So kudos to that. I'm struggling a little bit with wanting to split the difference bias that you spoke on earlier. Initially, I was leaning more towards the B because of a comment that Faith made last committee meeting, which really resonated with me. With we want to potentially, have people more prepared for when the real money does come out, this next funding cycle. So that's kind of where I've been leaning since our last discussion. And but C also splits that difference a little bit and kind of gives you a little bit of the best of both worlds in a lot of ways. So that's kind of where I'm at, and I'm kind of resonating with at this juncture. Also, one thing that did stick out to me was in C, the additional planning grants that you added, which were 5, all of them actually got perfect scores with hitting our target populations, whereas with B, it was 9 out of the 12. So there were 3 that didn't get the perfect scores for hitting our target population. So those are kind of some of the things I noticed as you were going through it. So as I said, good work. It really did help me kind of reformulate my opinion and get me to this far. So that's all I got.
Maria?
Thanks. Can you clarify, maybe this isn't as obvious to me or I missed something, but between portfolios, I know some of the amounts of grants stand out. When you're pivoting from one cluster of grants to the next, let's say if you're increasing the number of planning grants in B compared to A, is the group of fewer planning grants in A, meaning that these are like the highest scoring, and then when you increase them as 29 grants in B, does that mean you're just being more inclusive of grants that were lower scoring but still meet criteria really strongly in other areas?
I'll answer that. Just yes, I think yes, that the way that we rank the portfolios, in portfolio 1.5 million, those were the top 1.5 million of planning grants, and then we went to further down the list. There are 55 planning grants, so there's a lot of planning grants, and so even with portfolio B, where you're funding, I had it right in front of me, I think there's 29 planning grants. That's just a tiny bit over half. So gives you a sense that yes, that's correct, that you were just going further down the list.
Thank you.
And I would just say to the central bias, it's really just wanting to push you all to have a conversation on the merits around portfolio C and being intentional around if that's the decision you want to go for, not to push against that, just be cognizant of that bias that exists to choose sort of the middle, and so that you're intentional around choosing portfolio C. That's the only reason I mentioned that.
Megan?
Yeah, thanks for the updated presentation and the detailed memo you sent alongside of it. I feel pretty thoroughly briefed about what the potentials are here. And I guess my comments are kind of a reiteration of last week, but a little bit more developed. Well, first, I'm happy with the additional information. Like, I feel really good that no matter what portfolio we choose, we'll be choosing portfolios that will benefit the communities that PCEF was designed to benefit. That comes across really clearly in the presentation and the memo, that the priority communities identified in the PCEF code language are ones that will be benefiting from this project, both in terms of Black, Indigenous, and people of color community, and also the East Portland maps were really strong. And I felt really good seeing that because that's something called out in the PCEF code. So it's our duty to make sure that happens. So I'm glad to see that. You did mention, and it's mentioned in the memo, that I just hope we bring attention to next time, that that there is no organization led by or directly serving folks with disabilities, at least unless it's like wrapped up in another multifaceted one. And that's an important gap that I hope we can intentionally target in terms of outreach and learning, collaborating with in the future. So that's a really important one to me. Yeah, I think what I said last time is, to me, I would support really any of these portfolios that how they're portrayed. Like, I can see the strengths of each of them. The hard decision is, at the end of the day, it's funding some projects and not others. And that's just the hard part I'm wrestling with again, like I was last week. It's an emotional sort of seesaw to make this final decision, and that, like, we're both going to be choosing really great projects led by great organizations that are going to lead to the positive benefits that PCEF was designed to, climate resilience and social justice, and sort of the combination of the two. But the negative is that 100 or so grants won't be funded no matter what choice we make. So that's like the bigger emotional struggle for me. And I guess at the end of the day, I said last week, I still lean slightly towards portfolio A because of the more direct impact on mitigation and implementation, and greenhouse gas reductions and money savings in people's pocket immediately. And it's still funding a lot of planning grants. It's not like there's still a lot of planning grants coming out of it. So that's just my first leaning. But as committee members make their statements, I'm swayable, and I know how our voting process works. So it's not a firm line in the sand, just putting it out there.
Steve?
I just want to reiterate what I'm sure everyone will reiterate, which is that this was really fantastic information. And thank you so much for being so receptive last week too, and bringing us back even additional detail. I also feel like we have a really good sense of what we have, and that we are seeing in all three of these portfolios what we had hoped to see. So that's really, really exciting. I was really encouraged, and it's not necessarily speaking for one of the portfolios, but I liked the portfolio C. In particular, what I noticed was the 3 additional workforce planning grants. And that feels important to me, that we're really, that we're leaning into those. And I know that those just happen to fall right into the next ranked planning grants, but I was encouraged to see that. So I might be wrong on the number, but I think that would bring us to 6 in the planning grants, and that seems great.
Robin?
Yeah, hi. First, thank you again. I think we're beyond the Q&A session, and it seems like people are making their statements, so I'll make my statements and thoughts. Last week, entering these conversations, I was leaning towards Portfolio B for all the reasons that Faith had mentioned. I think that Portfolio B would serve an excellent opportunity to build a robust pipeline for future projects when we will have more money down the road. And then Megan made that comment about urgency in Texas, and that really resonated with me. And in my mind, I was like, Megan, why did you have to say that? Because this is going to be such an easy decision for me, and it turns out to be very difficult. Because yes, this is urgent, and when you look at the planning grants and you kind of calendar them out, they're not really going to be offsetting any carbon until 2023, 2024 at the earliest. And I want to act faster than that. But so I was in the middle of the fence over the weekend, and but what resonated still for me was urgency, and we need to move fast. And I think there's another thing that I want to consider, I'm considering, and that considering that we are in a pandemic right now, and there are a lot of people in the PCEF priority populations that have been impacted negatively. They've lost jobs and financially, impacted by the pandemic. And when you look at the planning grants, at least the ones that I've read, most of the funding that goes to planning grants are used to pay for jobs in the local community for PCEF priority populations. And when you look at the implementation grants, yes, there's a lot of local jobs and work supported, but there's also money that's going to materials and supplies. And those materials and supplies are not necessarily coming from Portland. They're coming from other parts of the United States or even the parts of the world. And so when you have these funds that are coming from Portland and should support Portland, I feel that, particularly in a pandemic, that, we should be allocating those where we can benefit the people of Portland better. So going into the meeting, I was going to advocate for more planning grants. And when you shared Portfolio C, that's particularly appealing to me for a couple reasons. One is that it offers more planning grants. But also when you look at the differences between Portfolio A and Portfolio B in terms of estimated greenhouse gas emissions, it's only an incremental smaller amount Portfolio C versus Portfolio A. So by going with Portfolio C, you're still getting kind of the same big bang for the buck from the greenhouse gas emissions. And I guess the other thing that I really like about C is, it says right here, 5 out of 5 of the planning grants really hit our target market, so target population. So I think Portfolio C is really engaging the communities that we want to serve. It's creating jobs, and it has a pretty robust greenhouse gas emission reduction, compared to the other portfolios. So, I can support all of them. I really like C, yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Maria?
Thanks. My bias straight up is that I'm a planner and love plans, but I also am leaning strongly toward implementation heavy portfolios because I'm hearing and seeing the urgency, particularly in the grants I've read that strongly reflect PCEF community groups that shape the guiding principles, and just seeing some comments that have come in talking about the timing and the timeliness of implementation grants. I have also seen many planning grants that would be such strong candidates for other funding opportunities, and some that I would pitch to public agencies, whether they're transportation or housing, to really get on it and to meet communities where they're at, because the communities have already outlined these wonderful ideas here that many public agencies could invest in outside of PCEF. So lots of good ideas. Hard to really choose one portfolio over the other, but implementation is weighing heavy on me right now, and thinking how we can be actionable sooner than later with all the benefits that many of you all have outlined.
Wondering if Shanice, Amanda, Michael, or Ramses have kind of a general inclination at this point or thoughts that they'd like to share. Michael?
I'm leaning towards B for lots of the planning grants for many of the reasons that have been presented. I think that, you know, I want to fund it all, of course, but I think that our next two funding cycles coming up is going to be a lot more money and a lot more opportunity you know, we have 100 grants that we're not funding this round. Hopefully that won't be true over the next few rounds. And I would really like to, I'd like to see more grants coming in from community organizations that I think that's the important part of planning grants, is that we help smaller community organizations, newer, traditionally kind of ignored organizations to be able to present grants that are really great. And so I lean towards B. C I would also be really good with. That's all.
Ramses? I knew you were going to be the one to break in the game of silence chicken.
Tried. I am at this stage fully confident that staff can present us 29 different scenarios and they would all feel really well thought out and balanced. So I just want to acknowledge that. You know, I think I'm at the stage where I think just really want to hear more from our remaining committee members on this. You know, I think I've noted this in my past comments. I feel like it's been very helpful to get more information, but it's also made the decision more difficult. So I will note that. But I think I really want to lean in with the remaining committee members just to hear that temperature check. And I think one thing, you know, I think I'll note, I think has been highlighted. I think for most of these implementation grants, correct me if I'm wrong in terms of the timing, but I would assume that most of these would not be completed until probably after this next cycle. So I think we're really talking about those grants that they were to apply. We're not talking about the immediate next cycle, but probably the one following that. So just wanted to make sure that we just check that sort of assumption, but that logic could still hold true for how folks have stated that. But I just wanted to verify and check that assumption. But I think I support so far what folks have stated in each of these camps. So I'll pause there.
I'll verify the comment that Ramfis made, and I think you're meaning most of the planning grants would not be completed until. So yeah, it's right. We will sign these. Correct. Once city council takes their action, we will contract with these. We will begin contracting with them. That takes its time, but then those planning grants will get in the swing, and those planning grants will take a year, and we will be turning back to you all and coming back to you all starting on our meeting on the 17th, start outlining our planning for the next RFPs, which I won't say more about that, but they will happen before those would be generally completed. We will be at this over and over many, many times again, too.
And I will weigh in here. I think that I resonate with many of what committee members highlighted, and I definitely see valuable to kind of sit with an additional option, especially with some of these similar elements that we were processing in the last couple of weeks, and appreciate also the staff support here, presenting information to us and taking in some of the ways that we can analyze and think about which of these portfolios makes the most sense. And I think I had the opportunity to review many planning grants and just look at other ones in different ways. But through my experience in the screening kind of process, I think had a very closer relationship, if you will, with the planning grants, and see a lot of power in would name the word urgency maybe as well, and then I think about what that looks like and how that manifests for different communities. So I'm curious. Yeah, I'm curious about do we need to come to consensus about the implementation and planning grant kind of chunks here, and what feels in our own decision making essential in a pilot year, and or what we want to think about and those kinds of grant decisions. Maybe we don't. But yeah, I think B or C, right? I think A is feeling maybe the reasons that I've heard from other folks. I'm just gravitating more towards the other two, and I'm operating from a space of our own work rate up until this point in the analysis that folks are bringing forward in this discussion tonight. And so appreciate you all, and have those long-term wonderings about strategies or coherent ways that we can think about how these things operate and work.
Oh, sorry,
I apologize. I was muted. I see Michael's hand up, but maybe Amanda, I'd like you to invite you to go first since you haven't spoken yet.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Michael. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely, I just sitting here trying to resonate with everything that has been said tonight. This is such a, difficult decision. I'm just scrolling back and forth on all of these and just, just sitting with everything. One thing that really stands out to me that is really like speaking to me, with everything that's in mind is the portfolio B, honestly. Just like the wide variety of everything it's kind of like that sweet spot in between both of them. Yeah, and I'm just kind of, I keep, trying to go back and forth with A and C, and I just keep coming back to B. And I think it's the regenerative ag and the green infrastructure that is showing up in the planning grants for me. Yeah, that's just kind of where I'm at. I'm just portfolio B. That's kind of where I'm sitting right now.
Michael?
Yeah, I was just I think that we have a lot of committee members that are really good planners. I'm a builder by trade. I build stuff. It's kind of what I love to do. So I'm going to throw this out as part of A, just for the record, is that like actually getting infrastructure built, getting ag projects done, like it, that's the thing that I love to do, right? Like sitting in front of a computer is my worst nightmare. And like working in the field is what brings me joy. All that said, I'm still going with B. But I just want to throw the like that, actually building stuff is, I think, what is what we want to do in the future. But I think to get there, we really need to get some more planning, some more grants in for review, and part of doing that is paying for community organizations to be able to put those grants together.
Jeffrey?
I have a question, a comparison between portfolio A and C. As Robin mentioned, the greenhouse gas emissions difference is not that big there, but we lost 2 implementation projects there. Can you elaborate a little bit on that, as why, we lost two implementation projects, but the greenhouse gas emissions number didn't go down as much?
I'll just share. Yeah, you lost between portfolio A and portfolio C. You lost one project that was focused on single-family residential homes doing deep retrofits, and then you lost going from A to C. You lost also a multi-area project. It was a commercial energy efficiency and green infrastructure project, and it just was that as we estimated the greenhouse gas emissions reductions associated with those projects, it simply was just that it was smaller on those projects. They were deeper investments on a smaller, on fewer homes and buildings.
Okay, thank you.
So I mean, I'm trying to from a dollars perspective. Let me think. I don't have the numbers in terms of what was the dollar difference in terms of the 2 projects that were lost. I don't know if that would change it. I don't know if that would change the math, but generally it's like there's essentially between portfolio A and portfolio C, it's, you get 500,000 more planning grants, you lose 500,000 in implementation grants. And so that the latter, the 500,000 that you lost just didn't have it. It wasn't as deep. It's not that it wasn't as deep. Yeah, we can speculate more. I don't know if there's more I can share. I'm trying to think. Katie, do you have anything to add on those? Yeah.
It was just, I don't have a whole lot more to add except for that just those projects didn't have as significant GHG reductions as other. They were kind of smaller in that way.
Okay.
So I do feel like everybody has kind of had an opportunity and has taken the opportunity to kind of say where they're leaning. I wonder if anybody is feeling like there is more that they want to explore as a committee, like more conversation that you want to have around the choice that you're making, or if it is Maria.
One more question. When council receives our recommendation, do they receive any more detailed information than what's being provided here? Are they making their confirmation based on these summaries, the way we're seeing them here?
We will present the summaries. We will present high-level summaries of the recommended package, so that just as a front summary, this is what you're getting in this package, but we will present the specific projects. So coming out of this, shortly after we come out, we will email you all and share with you all the specific projects, as well as email the individual, the actual applicant organizations, and share with them where they stood, whether they made it into the portfolio or not. And then so that as they, because once it goes to council, it'll be public, and so that they know, and then and council will have that information too. They'll have both they'll have the process as well as the recommendation, a summary of the recommendation, and the specific projects that are in the portfolio versus those that are not. And so we'll be sharing one-page summaries for each proposal. We'll be sharing with them a one-page summary. So they'll get a package of 100 and some odd pages.
Rampeace?
Yeah, I think on my end, I'm ready to move forward on a motion if folks want to entertain one. But I just want to make sure that we don't move forward unless there are folks who still have outstanding questions or concerns.
I wonder if it would be helpful to just enter into the chat kind of where everybody was. I know I was taking notes, but if for folks to just kind of as a reminder, if that would be helpful. Megan?
Yeah, I guess I was going to sort of say something similarly. I mean, ultimately, we work in a modified consensus building model, so it's a little bit different than just voting, although we could probably do a vote for like a temperature check, I guess. Is that what? And then we would have to figure out how to reach our modified consensus from there. Right?
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, well, let's do that. Let's take a temperature check, and we can do it out loud rather than in the chat. And maybe because we don't have a proposal to sort of check your temperature against, I guess I just would ask everyone if they could just say the like A, B, or C, or if you have two that because I did hear a number of people say that like I would be comfortable with B or C, or I would be comfortable with A or B. Or if you have a strong feeling about one, just indicate that letter. And maybe if we could just have everyone kind of say where they're at right now in terms of what they would be comfortable voting to support. Does that make sense and feel okay? Okay. So let's start with Maria.
A, then B.
Yeah, both extremes. Shanice?
B or C, but after hearing Michael say, I could be convinced on A, maybe. I don't know.
Amanda?
I'm B or C.
Robin?
I prefer C, but I'm okay with B. Wait. I prefer C, but I'm okay with B.
Megan?
Very small preference towards A, but I would support any of them really, so.
Rampeace?
B.
Michael?
I'm okay with any of them, but B is my preference.
Jeffrey?
Leaning towards C, but I'm okay with B.
And Faith?
I think similar to some other things we've heard, I'd support any of them. And my preference is for more projects. So, and I mean that in the global sense, so it would be B.
So B is the common denominator that everyone sort of at least indicated. And so if you all feel like you need to have more discussion, I think you have time to and space to do that now. And otherwise, I think we'll wait for a proposal. Michael?
Can I ask Megan why A?
Sure, Michael. And it's funny. I think my story is the opposite of yours. That you're a doer, but you're supporting the planning grants, and I'm a planner, and I'm supporting the implementation grants. But I think I just said in the last meeting, in this meeting, that I just like the idea of implementing projects that reduce costs for folks now, and that start putting more renewable energy out there now, and that it also still had a lot of planning grants. It wasn't like there were no planning grants. So I just felt like it kind of hit the sweet spot for me, but I don't feel strongly. Everybody else's thoughts on B and C swayed me. And so my preference for A is a little bit.
Maria?
Well, just wanted to restate that same thing. Being able to build things, even though I'm all about planning and even more planning, especially for communities who've never really had that opportunity to be resourced to plan. But even then, I feel like after this roundtable, advocating for portfolio B to go to council is something that's really pushing me, because then we could also hear from council and community if they lean towards A heavily, and if there's a really good cause to advocate for A, I think they will make it known. But I think B just is my hunch that that's not one that maybe they would select outright if they were in our position right now. So I will advocate for that one in that sense. And because all of you have uplifted it in one way or another.
Amanda?
Yeah, I don't know if this is appropriate, but I can't help but think about the 42 people that are on this call, right? The people that are watching and listening to us debrief on all of this, and that have been continuously showing up to these meetings and just being in this space with each of us. Like, none of us, like not even committee members, know which applications are in this in the different portfolios. So with all the information presented, I'm almost just wondering, like, can we just have the public write in the chat, like just a letter on what they're leaning towards? Like, I don't even know if that's appropriate, but I'm just like trying to think out of the box here, because this is such a big thing. But I mean, nobody knows what applications are in these portfolios. So it's like, I almost feel like we need more perspectives. And I apologize if this is complicating the process or if it's inappropriate, but I keep looking back at our guiding principles too, like justice-driven, community-powered, accountability. Like, everything is centered on community, and like the community's been part of this conversation this entire time, yet they're not able to weigh in on the process, you know? Yeah, just want to put that out there.
Rantis?
Yeah, I appreciate that that comment and suggestion, Amanda. I think it's I think it's something that we should definitely take a deep consideration, especially as we think about future funding opportunities. I think, trying to think about fairness, and I think the best that we can do in terms of fairness is just stick to the process that we had laid out. Because I think, I think in all fairness for many community folks, like if we were putting this up for a vote, we would have made that clear for everyone and take a vote. So I think the turnout would have looked different for today. But I do want to just honor and recognize, I think your suggestion, because I think our values do challenge us and try to find ways where we can get community input in such a way. But I think for this round, I would just kind of encourage all of us to try to stick to the process as best as we can. I know that's has its own downsides, but I think at the end of the day, that's will land as the most fair for all applicants, as is what we had set the expectation up until this point. I'll pause there, but I think
Michael?
I guess I'd also like to say that I think it's been a lot harder with Zoom and not in person, and not having that opportunity to talk to community members after meetings and interact with them during meetings and kind of read a room and feel the energies that are in the room, right? I think that's presenting a big challenge here also, as far as involving community members, and as with the process that we've laid out, is sort of not hearing informally from our communities, but I agree with, so I agree with Amanda that we need that input, and we haven't been getting it in this digital format. But we also, we also came up with lots of community input, and going back to the community and then going back to the community again, and fixing our problems, coming up with this process. And I think that we really tried to listen to our communities and get a process that was going to work for this round. So I'm hoping that we change some things up, especially if we continue to be in an electronic format for the next round. But so I do agree. I agree with Rainfeast. I agree with Amanda. Zoom. Good.
Megan?
Yeah, thank you, Amanda, for pushing us to think about that. But I do tend to agree with Renfeast's point that at this point it would be unfair because we hadn't said that in advance. So it would be kind of an odd time to decide that. But I think you bring up a good point to think about for future decision making, to think about community engagement beyond the many, many ways we have tried to engage community. And I mean, holistically since the beginning of PCEF. And now I think, honestly, I think it's why S9 exists to these positions, is to make this decision, the hard one, after lots of community engagement the entire way. And some parts, I don't want to push that back onto community. I think that's part of why we've been meeting for years, is to have to make the hard decision here. So on that note, I guess I'll propose, not even the one I suggested, y'all, but listening to everybody, it sounds like there's some sort of coalescing around proposal B, and I think there's lots of really great merits to it. So on that note, I will propose that we consider portfolio B. Remove, what do I say? Did I say that right? I will put forward consideration of portfolio B to the rest of you.
think we picked up your meaning. So let's do now kind of a formal temperature check, and then we can go around and ask folks, unless there's more discussion needed, to affirm, stand aside, or say no. So maybe just a quick temperature check if folks are feeling like they're ready to vote, or not vote, but ready to indicate their decision about the proposal that Megan made for recommending Portfolio B for funding to City Council.
And for process clarification, Katie, so when folks say now, as I read by the structure June reminded us we agreed to about a year ago or something, people will just say how comfortable they are, and then there's still time for more discussion. So we're not like, so there's still time for discussion if folks are feeling the need for it.
Yeah, that's right. So how comfortable you are kind of moving forward with making a decision. And we'll start with Jeffrey this time.
I'm comfortable moving forward with the decision.
Okay. Faith? Faith gave a thumbs up. Michael? Also gave a thumbs up. Ranfis? Also, okay, so this is a trend now. Also gave a thumbs up. So now the next person has to unmute themselves. Robin?
I knew it was me. I can support B.
Okay. Maria?
I'm comfortable supporting the proposal.
Amanda?
I'm comfortable supporting the proposal.
Okay, and Shanice?
I'm good with moving forward.
Awesome. Okay, so now it sounds like there's not additional need for a discussion, and no amendments would be a difficult one to amend. So I think I'm gonna now run through the list again and ask for a decision. So this is where you vote to affirm the decision or say that you would like to stand aside, which counts as an affirmation, but sort of is recorded as you're not 100% on board with it, or indicate no.
Sorry, sorry, Katie, just a process question. Do we need a second? Or are we just okay to just go vote?
I don't think that we do need a second.
Okay.
But if you want a second at Ranfis, you should.
I just can't recall if we second the motion, but.
We have in the past, but it's not in the bylaws. So I don't actually think that we need, I don't actually think that we need a second. So let's start with Shanice this time.
And Katie, just to state it, this is just to stay clear. This is to recommend Proposal B to City Council.
Yeah.
Portfolio B.
I support moving forward with Portfolio B.
Excellent. Maria?
I support Portfolio B going to council.
Faith?
I support.
Amanda?
I support.
Jeffrey?
I support.
Ranfis?
I support, and I think just want to quickly note, I think just appreciate everyone on this process, and I think that what matters, I think what we do next is how we refine and take the feedback that we've been discussing about how we can improve the process. So I appreciate this conversation because it's been really valuable. So again, I support.
Thanks, Ranfis. Michael?
I support.
And Robin?
I support.
And Megan, you put forth the proposal, so you do not need to indicate if you support or not. So, all right, good job, y'all. That was a big decision.
Okay. Now we got to figure out how to celebrate. Huge, just congratulations. I really, I think everyone can breathe a little bit now. Really huge congratulations. We will pull this together and we will share what's behind. It's almost like the Price is Right. We'll share what's behind door B soon. So I just a huge congratulations. Just want to thank you all for all the discussion here, and it's why you all are here, and just profound gratitude from us, because this has been, you know, as much as we go back and we're like, okay, how do we pull this together? And it's been really enjoyable. So I want to thank you all. There's going to be more opportunities to celebrate. Obviously, they're going to be, and we'll give you all an opportunity at the end of the committee meeting to share your reflections and just to give a little space for you all. So we will continue chatting here, but again, I want to thank you all for going along with this journey with us and getting us to this point. So we'll celebrate soon, April 1st, but we will follow up with you all shortly. But before we do that, the next item that we wanted to chat about as part of going to council was what goes in front. How do we actually introduce this package to council? And so there will be, you know, on the 17th, we'll talk about co-chairs. I hope if we don't get to a co-chair decision in that meeting, which I hope we are able to, we'll at least be creating space to talk about how we present the information to City Council on April 1st. And so leading up to that, so there will be an opportunity. We have 2 hours of City Council on April 1st, where we will be going in front of them, and there will be a presentation where we get to add and reflect on what this process was and the package that goes before them. But as part of the written materials that get sent to them, there is a summary that our reporting subcommittee has been working on and provided feedback on, that staff drafted and chimed in on. And we shared that with you all and posted it online, but we shared that with you all earlier this week. And so I wanted to check in and see if folks had a chance to see that, and whether we could entertain another decision on whether that was whether there could be a decision to include that as part of the recommendation that goes to City Council with the funding. So I don't want to share more. I'd love to turn it over to either Megan, Renfrew, or Maria to just speak to your reflections on the document and what that was meant to, the purpose that was meant to fulfill. I'm sorry, I'm putting you all on the spot. So
I got it. And then I'll invite you all to come join me after I say my 2 cents. We were creating this document with Sam and team to pretty much summarize a lot of what this process has been about, to celebrate the highs and to also acknowledge the challenges that we had experienced along the way, along with the things that have been happening in the community. So this is just a quick snapshot, but just a way to help them download everything that's happened in these meetings that they weren't present in, and to talk about the ways we engage community, the ways that we commit to bringing them in closer into the process, and what to look forward to. So a lot of wordsmithing too that I know Sam still needs to do, but he has been listening to some of that feedback very closely, and will incorporate anything else you might want to add to it between now and then. So this is what we've got to share with you all so far. Ramses and Megan.
Yeah, I'd say I think you captured it well. I think it's a great top level summary. I think there will still be an opportunity to have a more comprehensive sort of report. So I think that will be something that we will be reviewing and working together as a committee. But I think in terms of the work and how we present this in tandem as we provide this update, it feels really appropriate to do it within this timing. So I just want to thank staff for trying to steward this and getting both this funding out on time as well as a timely update for City Council as they approve our recommendations. So I'll pause there. I don't know if there's anything you want to add there, Megan.
Yeah, I think Maria and Ramfis hit it. What I'll add is that, so our committee haven't formalized a name yet, but probably reporting and evaluation committee. We definitely hemmed and hawed on this a little bit, in part because this, and so I think they already underscored that this report is a brief report intended as a preview to the funding package we're putting forward. And like that summarizes kind of just our process and like decisions we've made to date. It is not an evaluation of the program. It is not a deep, it's not even really a deep update. It's like a by the numbers, some highlights, some snapshots. And I think we all wanted to do a deeper dive, but we have confirmed amongst ourselves and with staff that that is not the intent of this particular document, that it is a preview to the funding proposals and an update to City Council and the public, the voting public of Portland and all of the community members of Portland, just like what the heck we've been up to for the last year. So kind of like that level. And so that's what it is. The reporting and evaluation committee is talking about a whole lot of other work, kind of that deeper reporting and deeper evaluation work that I think all of us really do want to engage in. So that's like still coming. So if you were feeling just I think that was important for me to know. And I think two other comments is we did briefly mention the committee members talked about whether there would be a need or desire or space for like a committee member call out box or section or additional letter to complement it. And I don't personally feel a need for that after reading it. I feel like we have a lot of opportunity as committee members to add our voice, but I still think that's something that remains on the table if the committee members felt like we needed a spot to have our voice that didn't have to go through staff, or that we could just take a different stand or clarify something staff might not feel ready to do on their own. That's something we could do. And I'm sorry, maybe I'm surprised I'm bringing that up, but I think we could. I don't know that we felt that we felt that the report was covering enough ground that we didn't come to anything ourselves on that. But I feel like that's important to mention to committee members, that we do have our voice as committee members outside of staff if we choose to like assert that. So it's another comment. And then the third comment is Sam. My additional comment to you would be that I feel like we need to say why we chose portfolio B. And so I hope lots of great, my 4 reasons that are basically 4 reasons you all articulated were more projects, local jobs. Robin, like that was like a heartbreaker, like heartstring for me, that one about local jobs as opposed to materials from afar. However, I should say that we were encouraging people to acquire local materials and implementation grants. More green infrastructure, renewable ag, that one spoke to me. Amanda said that one. And then Michael said to give capacity to communities that haven't always had the chance just to plan. And that does seem really important in a pandemic when it's hard to like do anything, to like just have space to plan and dream seems really important. So those are 4 reasons that stick out to me to capture in the report that are actually just things I heard you all say. But I think we need to add that in our report. Oh, and that we wished we could have funded many more, but we just didn't have enough money.
Yes, that's
Sorry,
on all of us to call it out if there's, if the tone is way off or it's just not capturing what has been in this space. Just give Sam that validation or that critical feedback on what we're trying to put forward here. Call us in.
Okay. So I'm taking note of the fact that, and so there's some of what we include in the package, and I think we've got good notes there, Megan, from what you just relayed about the portfolio B. So that's I think we can summarize that and include that, and then there will be that opportunity in the actual presentation that you all are giving, that where you all, and so I think that's still, what we anticipated was that we're like, it's about time to get to the co-chairs, and so we'll bring that forward on the 17th. And I think that's where a discussion on is the co-chairs. Does the co-chairs make sense to present the content? Does the whole, do folks want a different orientation in terms of presenting the content? But so there will be the actual, there's sort of the paper packet, and we'll add that context, Megan, that you just shared, I think, presuming that folks are okay with that. But then there's the actual presentation you all give, which is a lot, which means a lot in terms of folks being there in person and the council members hearing that. So I just want to acknowledge that there's going to be another opportunity just to reflect on how you want to speak to both this process as well as the decision you all made here today. beyond sort of what's in paper. So this may be an easier decision, but do folks feel like you would like either more time to, and we can certainly we can turn up the screen share again. I don't know if we want to do it side by side. I don't know if we want to read, but we can always pull the screen share and share our screen and walk through the document if that would help, just so folks get oriented to sort of the sections that are there. And then there are a couple placeholders that we have for images and diagrams that we were going to add to the document once we had our graphics folks pull that together along with Lockie.
Would that be helpful to folks? I think Faith, that's the second time I've seen you unmute yourself. So I'm going to just stop. You go.
Maybe you were going to get there. Sam, are you calling for a decision? Yes. Okay. On whether or not to move forward with this report.
Yeah. Well, we've called it the summary report, but yeah, on just a reflection of your year one, that would essentially be the front page before they get to the funding recommendation, so they know what all went. It's certainly a summary level, and I think that's going to be clear. And I think I just want to get it, but it's going to reflect what's sort of the paper copy that they're going to get in front of the funding recommendations.
And maybe just as a reminder, this is of kind of this subcommittee forming. The committee has in the code a responsibility to report to council on the performance of the program. And so and when we kind of were having that conversation as a committee, I think Maria brought up and kind of there was a lot of agreement around the idea that to really like the sort of long-term, what does program success look, and what is the performance of the what are those metrics, and what is reporting the performance of the program look like, will require community engagement and will require kind of time to really develop and be thoughtful about. But there was also this short-term need, right? Because we're going to council soon. The program's been doing a bunch of stuff for the last year. We don't have like grants to report on, but we have a lot of activity. And so the subcommittee and with Sam's, working with them was sort of like, this is the report essentially to council on what the program has been doing for the performance of the program for the last, like up to now. It's not going to be the same stuff every year, but it is from the committee, which is, I think, why it felt important to bring it to the meeting and have it be approved. Maria?
Yeah, our group has a lot more work to do, but something that Megan Ramfis and I were talking about is how we can take a lot of the community input and input from everybody to turn it around and potentially inform the next RFP and get that in, because we've gotten feedback about application, the process, deliberation, and I think this is where we can really shape the next go around, but it's got to start somewhere, and this is how we're introducing that.
Robin?
Yeah, I just want to piggyback what Maria just said. I think, when we've developed this whole process and everything, we've always said that, this is our first stab at, kind of doing this, and that we expect, to learn and improve. And I see a little bit of that language in the last paragraph that says looking forward. But if that's something that you could emphasize a little bit more, is just saying that, we know we were not perfect, but and we hope to really use this as a learning experience. This first round is a learning experience to, improve, however we do things, for the future rounds. Just a little bit more direct. That's my only comment.
I'll just note to that, Robin, I think that is really important. And as embarrassing as it is, I just read this because I didn't have access. I didn't have email before tonight, so I just went to the public and downloaded this and read it. And I think even on the first page, in the first couple of paragraphs, it's really pointing to that as a inaugural year and a learning year, and we're taking we're using process that's developed this year to really move forward and learn and adjust in years forward. So I do think it's captured both at the cap ends that we're intending to be learning, but maybe there is additional language there too. Just wanted to point you to that paragraph too on the first page.
I think if I'm understanding it correctly, I think I feel comfortable with the summary. I think it articulates at a higher level what's been going on here, and so to my understanding right now, you're looking for us to vote on what would be the cover page to the series of one-page summaries of the grant proposal packet for council.
That's correct.
That's good to know. I just have question marks like, why do we need to vote on that if not the rest? But happy to support getting that rolling.
Yeah, actually funny. Yeah, our subcommittee wasn't 100% sure either if this was like the kind of thing the entire committee, but we thought since it's kind of since it's going to be a very public facing report going to council with our funding recommendations attached to it, that at least we should hear what the other committee members thought. But yeah, whether it should be a vote, it's a good question, Shanice.
It really, I mean, it's sort of this, I'll just acknowledge it's this ambiguous space because there's this code requirement that you all report to council and the public on the progress of the fund. And that code requirement doesn't say you do it every year, doesn't say you do it every 6 months, just says you do it. And so you could say, this isn't going to be that, but we were like, this is an opportunity to speak to, and sort of does meet and fulfill that obligation of speaking of what has been happening in the past year. So it really is, if you all were like, well, we don't need to let this stand alone this year, and you can, it's not, we're not missing an opportunity. We're not sort of, there isn't something we're missing by you all not necessarily doing that, but this just served as an opportunity to try to see if we could, if we wanted this to be something from the committee that reflects the work that has happened to now. So if you all wanted to go ahead, if you all felt comfortable to make a decision, if not, we'll adjust. I don't know how much of this will change other than to say that this is something the committee wanted to send to you all versus we would just put it together and probably remain more ambiguous about the origination of the cover letter.
Rantis, and then Michael.
Yeah, I just want to say, for folks, like, I think this is a really important part of the legislation. So that's not super clear. So I think we are building the precedent. And so I think it's really important to acknowledge, like, hey, this is, we're being intentional on being a summary. 2, we know, like, we're not technically completely finished with the grant making process. So I think there's still that opportunity to do a more robust effort and set the bar in the future for how we want this progress report to be done. But I think it's important as a committee, we really chew and digest this a little bit, like, what is the importance for progress reports? I think it's a piece and a mechanism to hold us and staff and the organization accountable to making sure that we are actually achieving the true promise of PCEF. So I think that's something that I think we as committee members should understand and reflect. And like this, even if this decision may seem a bit premeditated, or at least if the decision seems like it's, the relevance is in question. I think the relevance is we're just building precedents for future evaluations and how we present to cities. I think that is what makes this a level of importance. But I just do want to note this level of distinction is, I think we want to sort of say, this is a summary report. Caveat is we want to do a more robust effort for future years, or however we want to do these periodic updates. I just want to note that because I think that's really important. We shouldn't just like dismiss this for being something that's just irrelevant, where this, the language is unclear, but really get to the root of why this aspect is important.
I'll just jump in and say, Ramses, thank you. I didn't say that. That's exactly what. Thank you. Better captured it.
Michael?
Yeah, I was also going to say that I don't necessarily know how much City Council's been keeping up with us, and we have a bunch of new City Council members. So this is also, it also feels like this is an introduction to PCEF, to the committee, to the community, to say this is what's been happening. Here's been sort of an overview of our process, and here's where we're at. Even if it doesn't have information about how these grants worked out, it does have information about where we started, where we're at. And I think that's important to relay, especially to a new city council and a city council that may not have been keeping really, I don't know how close the tabs are keeping. You guys have a better idea, but.
Yeah, Michael, if I can just quickly respond, I think you captured it really well. I think it's unclear how we're connecting, but this would be like sort of the official way of building, again, that precedence of how we connect with the city council and how we formally connect, because I think we currently do not have that formal role. I think staff really plays that intermediary role. So again, I think for this committee to think about like, if this function works. I think Megan noted, like, if it's important for us as a committee to have our own voice in a cover letter or like a one pager, that's also, something that we can explore. But again, I think we're just, building that precedence for how we connect and what that touch is. So I think you really highlighted it really, really well with your point there, Michael.
Thank you,
Amanda?
Ramses and Michael, for I can chime in after Amanda.
Sorry, Shanice. Amanda?
I was going to say she could go, but just real quick, curious if there's any other like grant committees in the city of Portland that have like already done this kind of work, and curious how they present the information to the council, to the city councilors. Like if the work's already there, then, we could follow it. Just an idea.
I'll just share.
Do you want to speak to that real quick, Sam?
Yeah, I'm not as familiar with, I mean, the closest body that functions as close to us is the Children's Levy, the Portland Children's Levy. And they have a city councilor they have a 5-person body, and one of them is a city councilor, one of them is a county commissioner. So it's different, is maybe what I'll just share.
Shanice?
Yeah, I'll just quickly share. Appreciate the additional kind of dialogue around the importance of this document. And I think some of those pieces in other places definitely poke out to me, and I'm curious about potentially it's just maybe simple in the looking forward area of this document to maybe indicate some of what the functionality of what we're chewing on here, especially as we're looking forward into future years, this being where grant portfolios might be kind of having a potential update from the prior year, and what this discussion we're having now to be kind of maybe show up in that section, I think could be maybe, I don't know, as we think about that, instituting this practice and the purpose of this document. I know it's not necessarily whatever it's going to be presented in. The council ultimately, will make the resolution or the ordinance or what have you, but that there's maybe just some language somewhere that maybe articulates this in our overall presentation.
Just on your point there, Shanice, do you have like specific thoughts or examples, like what those things to look forward to?
So when I read the materials sent to us, it kind of unpacks that, future reports by the committee will be longer, and they will include reports on our grant portfolios, and that this really is this part of before getting to the grant recommendations. And so I don't think it's a long drawn out thing, just kind of something that hits on what is coming up for folks in this space in regards to the functionality of the document.
Michael?
I guess I also want to reiterate that, as we present our findings in the future, and I think this document does it pretty well, but that, not just numbers, but narrative, right? The stories of people that have been impacted, the stories right now of like, how have we done for community members thus far? How have we done for community organizations, for the PCEF coalition? I think that really also needs to be a strong part of reporting going forward, like the narrative of how we've done, not just the numbers, not just here's the grants we put out, but like what has the impact been on a personal level, on a community level, and getting that information from community members. We listen to community members during comment periods, and it makes me feel really good. And when the comments are critical, it also makes me feel really good. So I hope that we have that narrative voice in there too.
Thanks, Michael. Shanice, is your hand up again or still?
Nah, I'll lower it.
Okay. Just want to make sure.
So I heard I captured two edits that I heard from committee members. One from Shanice, and this is for folks in the public. When we sent this to committee members, in the email, we acknowledged that this is really just a first year summary, and that there would be a longer summary in future years that involved speaking to the actual projects that are funded. So one, I heard that just include and add that into this document so that it's part of this document and folks see that in here, that intention to come back and provide both longer and a deeper dive that's speaking to the projects. Two, we heard at the end reiterate, so that as we're closing out, reiterate that this isn't perfect, and that we will be using this experience to improve, as a learning experience, to improve future rounds. And so those are the two edits, at least the additions I've heard. I want to see if there's, I think we can capture those. And Katie, I see you raising your hand. So.
Oh, I think I heard one more that was just that Megan mentioned up front, just about sort of why portfolio B, and so just kind of adding that piece.
So, and then the why for portfolio B, which I took notes, Megan, on what you said, but they are
more projects, local jobs, more green infrastructure, regenerative ag.
Well, that one might be a little bit my bias and not so much a group consensus. Yeah. to be clear.
So maybe there's only really three to list there, and the last one being providing funding for folks who have not historically been funded to do planning. Faith?
Well, and I heard Michael's last comment too, right? About it would be wonderful if we could tell this we can tell stories about how communities have been impacted. And I think we probably have some of those stories right now, right? Even in the outreach. If we don't, I'm not asking for a full, let's start over, but I heard Michael ask that, and I think it's really important. Because then it becomes really alive, right? Then the report is something that people, it really sticks with them too if there's community stories there. If they've been offered. Sorry, I'm gonna quit rambling.
I resonate with that, Faith. I saw your hand is raised. I don't know if you have more to share before I hop in. I'd also add, I see earlier in the document, it kind of unpacks, we are going to kind of circle back next year with a more thorough update. And I'm curious about the connection to just overall what we're talking about, the function and purpose of this document. And maybe there's some more room to be explicit versus reiterating, and that it will do these things, look at our portfolio, discover narratives, etc. And that this will be a kind of an annual way that we present the information. I think that could be a great opportunity to be coherent there.
Okay, for those that are just listening, and I'm seeing nodding, that to spell it out up front, so going a little further, to spell it out up front that this is just a summary this year, but the intent of this is to be a report of the committee on an annual basis, providing some narrative around the work that is happening, as well as speaking to the projects and within the program.
Just put you all on the hook, I think. So I think I like that suggestion. I think it helps capture, some of the feedback thus far, and I think captures, just the heart of how we do reports. But I think, yeah. So I think if there's any concerns from staff, I think it's a good. It seems like it's putting the hook for a report annually. So that could be a decision that we're making here, but I think that's something that. I do like the suggestion from Shanice there to be a little bit more explicit.
I'm just obviously there are things I should, but that seems reasonable. That seems reasonable, and I think staff can support that. So I think that's right. Okay. So I think we've got the three edits here, really fleshing out at the front end to speak to the purpose of this report explicitly, setting the precedent that this is an intention to bring this yearly, coming back with more including narrative, and at the end adding a sentence reiterating that this is a learning year, and then speaking to why Portfolio B was selected. I think we can add those. I think we've got enough to add those, and feel comfortable. We have enough clarity to add those.
With those changes, are folks feeling like they would be comfortable with this as a communication from the committee to council? I'm seeing some nodding and thumbs upping. Sam, do you feel that, and maybe I wasn't 100% clear on where we landed, whether this needed sort of like a formal proposal and then everyone to kind of go through the voting process?
I think let's do it, because I think that was the intent we came into the meeting with, and at least it honors the intention around this, and I appreciate it. So I think if the folks are okay with that, I think let's go ahead and make this a proposal and make sure it has that weight, that's what it is, and that's what we're setting out our intention for.
Okay. I might ask one of the subcommittee members who helped draft this to and shape it to put forward a proposal.
This is Ranfis. I make a motion to support the proposal with the recommended edits from our committee members to approve the, motion to approve the proposal before us with the recommended edits from committee.
So it's the letter as drafted with the changes that Sam articulated that the committee members brought forward.
For clarification, can we do other edits that weren't specified in the space if we catch anything else? Just want to make sure we have some flexibility to do some additional editing.
If you all want to say not substantive edits, but like catches, yes, I think that you all have that discretion to say that.
As a non-subcommittee member, I'm comfortable with that. It's wordsmithing during a meeting is always can go a rabbit hole, right? So I think that's fine with me.
Yeah. Do we think we need any more discussion before moving to just asking folks to affirm the proposal? I think given that nobody seems, or I'm not seeing anybody's like jumping up or their hands raising, and we do want to give you all a few minutes to sort of have some comments at the end of the meeting, because this was, you may recall, not very long ago, a little less than an hour, we made a big decision, and so we want to give you the opportunity to kind of like have some time to do closing comments. So I'm gonna just ask for folks to affirm, stand aside, or say no to the proposal, which is to accept the letter as it is drafted substantively, knowing that, you know, wordsmithing and small edits can be made with the additions that Sam articulated a few minutes ago. And I'm going to start with Amanda.
Can I just give a thumbs up? Is that
you can? Yes, I'll take a thumbs up as an affirm. Shanice?
Mute button, affirm.
Thanks. Maria?
I affirm.
Robin?
I affirm.
Jeffrey?
I affirm.
Faith?
I affirm.
Michael?
I affirm.
And Megan?
I affirm.
And Ranfis, you put forth the proposal, so you do not need to affirm. All right, that is it. Sam, I'm going to pass it to you to say some words, and then you can. No words.
I don't have it. I don't need any more words. I want to just give the floor to you all. Yeah, thank you. I mean, obviously, thank you, and I'll mention our next meeting once more before we close. But thanks for you all.
This is Ranfis. I just want to thank Megan's leadership on sort of helping us set up the motion to move forward with the recommendations. I know it's been a really challenging conversation for everyone, so just appreciate everyone's willingness to share, to be messy, and I think land with good intentions, and looking forward to really hear updates down the road for all the applicants or future grantees on this, because I think this is what this program is served to do. It's putting dollars out there to actualize those dreams. And so as I am worried about how our state progresses on our climate goals, as I worry about how our nation progresses on our climate goals, I'm confident the precedents, how this community will continue to move forward despite where areas that we may feel gridlocked. So this is, I think, a thing that gives me hope. So looking forward to that.
We just decided on a funding package. That's kind of cool. And I mean, I once again want to thank all the community members, everybody that's on this call, everybody that you represent, everybody that went out and door knocked to make this happen. This has been a long process. It's really exciting to send $8-ish million out the door, and be able to put together a funding package for some really good projects, and that's exciting.
I must say this is a little anticlimactic here. So many of us, all of us, have been on this journey for the last year and a half, and it's been a wild journey. I've learned a lot. I've enjoyed working with everybody here, but just kind of end this today, this manner. Yes, we got 8.6 or whatever $1 million out the door, but being this digital Zoom environment, it's just kind of a little anticlimactic. I wish I had the opportunity to buy everybody a beer or their favorite drink, but that's not going to happen right away. So
you still can, Robin.
All right, I'll do a rain check. But yeah, it's just been a fun ride, and looking forward to the next round.
And I would just welcome you all to unmute your mic so you all can hear each other and get a little feedback for a moment, unless you have too much distracting stuff happening back there.
Megan?
Yeah, ditto everything everybody said, and thank you, Renfeast, because I actually have been lamenting maybe that I pushed forward a motion too quickly, but it's a messy process, and I do appreciate all the kind of deliberations and good thoughts that were coming up before then. That made it hard to make a final decision. I also want to honor all of the applicants. We had, well over 139 applications, 144 was it? And I've said it a few times, but I really wish we could fund many more, if not all of them. So that's the sad part of the celebration, but I'm very excited for the 40-ish or so we are funding. I can't wait to see them built, planned, whatever. And yeah, so I'm feeling.
Maria?
I just wanted to continue reading off from our opening inspiration, the comments that I missed. Our committee members shared who they're bringing into the space as they're making decisions for PCEF, as they're engaging with community, as they're sitting in these roles. So I'll continue reading the responses to give Megan a little bit more time to be able to chime in with hers. So once again, Robin, he's bringing in his children. It's their future, and they should have a voice in it. Jeffrey, the gentrified greater Northeast communities. Faith, great grandma, an earnest steward of life and poet to plants and fauna. Amanda, I'm bringing in my ancestors, family, elders, and the next 7 generations who are being impacted by every decision we make. Michael, my incarcerated brothers, sisters, and siblings. Shanice, my family, my chosen family and loved ones, relationships with Black people and communities of color, folks who may not be present but who need this friend. Ranfith, Juan Dominguez, day laborers, my family. And Megan, would you like to unmute and share?
Oh my gosh, that was moving. I'll just quickly say one is all the folks I know who've been doing renewable ag, whether it's they call it that or something else, in the community for decades and centuries and millennia before this moment, because that's my inspiration for being here. And then on a personal kind of more family note, I do sit with that. We are folks with disabilities are a big priority community for me and personally in my family. So thinking that we will fund you all in the future.
Thank you. And any other closing comments, please jump back in.
I'll hop in, and I know we're past 9 now, but it's been quite a journey, and I know a pandemic kind of happened in the middle of it, and appreciate the space that we hold for one another to be critical friends, critical thought partners, as we make the formative decisions that will make a lasting impact on this fund, and appreciate us being able to sit with these insights, especially as we kind of work in collectively with our community in so many ways. So appreciative of the staff and all of you.
Ditto to what Shanice said, just so much gratitude and love for being in community with you all, including all of our applicants and all of the community members that keep showing up.
Okay. Don't let me interrupt this, but if you have any thoughts, please jump in. Our next meeting is March 17th. I'm still thinking about how to share food with you all, so just stay tuned on the next email that we send, both because we'll share the applicants, but also because we've got ideas that we want to follow back up with. We may not be present together, but we may be able to share a meal together, the same meal. So stay tuned. Just profound love and respect for everything that you all bring to this, and thank you all for so much of your time and energy. I don't need to be the last word. If anyone else wants to say anything. Yeah. Congratulations. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Okay, I'm off to celebrate a kid's birthday. See y'all. Bye. That's right.
Bye.
Not everyone.
Good night.
Good night.